Stephen Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Planning is quite rightly a very sensitive issue. It is about conserving and improving our existing habitat. It is about the preparation for the challenges and demands of an increasing population. It requires measured and well-balanced consideration, both of what currently exists and what is required for the future. But it is also about preservation and the delicate matter of safeguards. I believe, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the National Planning Policy Framework delivers on all of these important considerations. There is no doubt that the planning system needed simplifying and making more accessible. So we have moved away from a cumbersome, bureaucratic mountain of guidance, some 1,300 pages in total, to a leaner, more flexible and clearer document of around 50 pages. But it was essential that in doing so, that long-term sustainability of our planning system was not sacrificed. And that is why I'm delighted that from root to branch, the central thread running through the NPPF is a doctrine of sustainable development, enshrining at the heart of our planning system that growth must never be achieved at the expense of future generations. Now, unlike the Shadow Minister, I would like to commend the manner in which the government's consultation into the draft framework has been conducted. The most telling tale is that those organisations who did express concerns about the draft framework, including the National Trust, English Heritage, the Campaign to Protect Rural England, and the long list of organisations name-checked by the Minister on Tuesday evening, they have all welcomed the changes that have been incorporated into the final framework. If I could just quote Dame Fiona Reynolds, the Director General of the National Trust, all of these changes improve the document and give it a better tone and balance. One of the most contentious issues of the planning system in my own constituency, and I'm sure in the constituencies of a great many honourable and right honourable members, is the issue of greenbelt protection. As the NPPF explicitly states, the government attaches great importance to greenbelts, the essential characteristics of which are their openness and their permanence. Representing a small city enclosed by Greenbelt, this commitment by the government is extremely welcome news for many of my constituents. And whilst Greenbelts themselves do indeed have their own character, they also play an essential role in preserving the special character of towns and cities across the country, including my own city of Chester. Greenbelts represent a necessary check on unrestricted urban sprawl. Of course I'll give way.
I'm grateful to him. Will he join me in urging councils that are currently consulting on potentially adding sites to their local plan that are in the green belt, having now seen this final guidance, to actually stop that and just think, we're not going to change the green belt at all, we don't need to, let's look at brownfield sites first?
I have a huge amount of sympathy for the honourable member from Amber Valley's point of view there, because green belts are not just there to stop urban sprawl, they're also there to prevent the merging of neighbouring towns into one another. They do provide much needed safeguards to prevent the countryside from encroachment, and indirectly they do assist in urban regeneration by encouraging the use of brownfield sites. And the NPPF is clear. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Of course I'll give one.
Grateful to the honourable gentleman. I agree with everything he said. In relation to getting the balance right, which I think is what is part of his theme, of course developers have the right to appeal when they believe that the decision has been wrongly taken. Does he agree with me that it would be welcome if the government were to actually look at that in certain circumstances there might in fact be an opportunity for third-party right of appeal against developments which in fact cause some concern within local communities?
Of course, they do have the right of appeal currently, but that's via judicial review, which can be difficult. It can be very expensive, but that right is there. I personally do think we have got the balance right at the moment, but it is something that we do need to consider. Also, in addition to green belts, the fundamental importance that the framework places on all green spaces is extremely reassuring. I particularly welcome paragraphs 73 and 74 of the framework that enshrine the intrinsic value of open spaces and playing fields into the planning system. As the document itself reads, access to high-quality open spaces and opportunities for sport and recreation can make an important contribution to the health and the well-being of communities. The commitment made in the framework that all open spaces lost to development must be replaced by equivalent or better provision will be received warmly by everyone in this country, young or old, who recognise how important these spaces are for our local communities. And furthermore, the introduction in paragraphs 76 to 78 of the new local green space designations add even greater weight to the importance of local neighbourhood plans, which have been, of course, brought in via the Localism Act. The NPPF is unequivocal in its defence of green spaces, and it will ensure that they are there to be enjoyed for generations to come. Representing a city steeped in history, as I do, Mr Deputy Speaker, I am obviously concerned to ensure that the importance of heritage is recognised within the planning system. Heritage should not be seen as a barrier to growth, but as an intrinsic part of it. In Chester... Go on then.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I'm enjoying his celebration of the virtues of heritage. Could you just clarify for the House whether or not he voted for VAT to be put on the alteration of listed buildings and churches?
I'm going to stick with the NPPF debate, if the member doesn't mind, because in Chester, we do not insist on the preservation of our Roman city walls and our Roman amphitheatre, or our medieval rows, or our Georgian townhouses, simply because they are old. We insist on their protection because they are what make Chester, Chester. Yeah. Planning is much more than a tool to cater for short-term demand. It must always consider the long-term consequences. Our heritage and our historic environment is unique and irreplaceable, and I welcome the statement in the NPPF that local planning authorities should set out in their local plan a positive strategy for the conservation and the enjoyment of the historic environment. Also, when determining planning applications, both developers and local authorities will have responsibilities to ensure that the development does not adversely impact upon heritage assets or their setting, a protection which will be particularly welcome in Chester, where almost every development will have an impact on our unique historic environment. I also know that the Minister and his colleagues have worked closely with English Heritage throughout the formation of the framework, and I'm again delighted with the importance that the NPPF places on conservation and the enjoyment of our nation's heritage. Finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I would very briefly like to welcome the significance placed in the framework upon the need to provide quality homes. Building homes is of vital importance for the future sustainability of our country, but of equal, if not greater importance, is the type of home that we build. As the Minister himself says in the foreword to the NPPF, confidence in development itself has been eroded by the too frequent experience of mediocrity. All too often, both in the private and the social housing sectors, the temptation has been to cram as many homes as possible into as small a space as possible. Blocks of flats have come to symbolise housing development in Chester, and I'm sure in many other parts of the country as well. But this is not what people want or need. What is required, what is wanted, are good quality family homes, yet these are the types of properties that are in least supply. The statement within the NPPF that local authorities should objectively assess the need for market and affordable housing in the housing market area is, I believe, hugely significant. However, this is one area of the framework that could be potentially difficult for the Minister and his department to monitor. I would therefore encourage the Minister to keep his sights keenly focused on what housing developments are being provided by local authorities to ensure that the housing needs of any particular area are indeed being assessed and subsequently acted upon. Mr Deputy Speaker, as I have said, planning is a very sensitive issue. The National Planning Policy Framework lays the foundations for sustainability, for growth, for protection, for preservation, but most importantly, it provides clarity. The NPPF is an excellent document. The consultation upon which the final document is based was to a standard that all consultations should aspire. The Minister is to be congratulated, and the framework should be welcomed by all.
Clive Betts. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.